There's this invisible threat, and it's seeping into our water from a place you'd probably never expect, our own healthcare system. So today, we're going to unpack this really complex and, honestly, growing problem of biomedical waste.
I mean, think about it. The last time you were at a clinic or a hospital, you see the syringes, the medication vials, the IV bags. These are all symbols of modern medicine, right? We trust them completely to make us well.
But here's the twist. Once they've served their purpose, these exact same tools of healing can turn into some pretty nasty pollutants. They pose this hidden danger to our environment and, as we'll see, eventually back to us. So you have to wonder, right? What really happens to all this stuff? I mean, where does it all go? And what kind of damage is it doing when it ends up in the wrong place? Let's follow that journey.
Okay, to really get a handle on this threat, we have to define what we're even talking about, because this is not your average everyday trash. Nope, this is a whole different category of waste, with its own unique set of dangers.
The official term is biomedical waste, or BMW for short, and it's a super broad term for basically anything that's generated during healthcare activities. We're talking everything from a simple blood test at your local clinic all the way to really complex research at a pharmaceutical company.
Now, what really sets this stuff apart from your kitchen garbage are its special powers, you could say. It can be super infectious, literally carrying diseases. It's often loaded with powerful chemicals and leftover drugs, and it's got this sneaky ability called bioaccumulation. And trust me, we're going to come back to that one. All right, so now we know what it is. Let's start tracing its path. Where does all this waste actually come from? And how in the world does it start its journey from a sterile clinic and end up in our ecosystem?
And you might think, oh, this is just a hospital problem. But it's not. The sources are incredibly diverse. We're talking research labs, drug manufacturers, even your local vet. Each one is contributing its own unique stream of potentially dangerous stuff.
And the sheer variety of the waste itself is just staggering. You've got infectious materials like blood and tissues. You've got sharps, needles and syringes. Chemical waste from all those disinfectants. And so importantly, pharmaceutical waste. All those expired or unused drugs.
So, we've covered what this waste is and where it comes from. But what happens when it's not handled the right way? Well, that's when a really dangerous chain reaction kicks off, with ripple effects that go way, way beyond the hospital walls.
See, when this waste leaks or gets dumped or just isn't treated properly, it has a funny way of finding its way into our rivers, our lakes, and our oceans. And when it does, oh man, that's when a whole cascade of serious problems is unleashed.
First off, the most direct threat is just disease. This waste can dump dangerous bacteria, viruses, and parasites right into our water supply. And that doesn't just harm fish and other aquatic life, it can contaminate the very water we depend on.
Then you've got the chemicals. All those disinfectants and solvents which are designed to be really powerful are, no surprise, toxic to aquatic life. They can wipe out the tiny organisms like plankton that form the absolute base of the food web, changing the fundamental chemistry of the water itself. It's a disruption from the bottom up.
But maybe the single most alarming problem here is the rise of antibiotic resistance. It's become such a massive issue that researchers have called it a major emerging environmental issue.
So how does this even happen? Well, think of it like this. You're essentially training bacteria to be stronger. When little bits of antibiotics from medical waste get into our water, they don't kill all the bacteria. They only kill the weakest ones. The toughest ones, they survive, they reproduce, and they pass on that resistance, creating what we call superbugs that our most important medicines just can't fight anymore.
And remember that word from earlier, bioaccumulation? Here's where it comes back. Pharmaceuticals in the water don't just vanish, they get absorbed by tiny organisms. Then a small fish eats those organisms. Then a bigger fish eats the small fish. And that contamination just keeps moving up and up the food chain until it could potentially end up right on our dinner plates.
Okay, I know, this all sounds pretty serious, pretty bleak, but it's not an unsolvable problem, not at all. There are actually really clear, systematic ways to manage this waste and break that chain of harm. This is how we fight back.
The whole solution is a carefully controlled process. It has to start right where the waste is created, with segregation. You know those color-coded bins you see in hospitals? Separating infectious waste from chemical waste right then and there is absolutely critical. Next up is treatment, using advanced methods like super high heat incineration to completely destroy pathogens, or using an autoclave, which is like a giant pressure cooker with steam, to sterilize the waste and make it harmless.
Only after all that does the now inert material go to a secured, specially designed landfill. And the whole thing is watched over by strict regulations to make sure everyone is doing it right.
So you see, at the end of the day, this isn't just about finding a better way to throw things out. It's about managing the entire life cycle of these medical materials, from the second they're used to their final, safe resting place.
So let's just bring it all together. What's the bottom line? Well, biomedical waste is a huge pollution problem because it's this double whammy of being both infectious and toxic. If we don't handle it right, it messes up our ecosystems and creates massive long-term health risks like antibiotic resistance. That's why having a proper, systematic management plan isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely essential.
And that really leaves us with this fundamental challenge, doesn't it? We all rely on modern medicine to heal us, to save us. But how do we balance that incredible need with our responsibility to the planet? How do we make sure that the very act of saving human lives doesn't end up poisoning our world?